New York City, 1936. In the dark heart of the Great Depression, the country seems like one giant skid row, a hive of poverty and desolation. No job is assured. People neither have the money to fill their cars or their bellies, and worse still, war swells and envelops Europe overseas. In such dark times, you need a distraction, something to keep your mind off the horrors of the world around you, especially if you're young and innocent. Such was the case for Jack Peele, only 10 years old, stumbling as he was dragged down the trash-strewn street by his older brother, 13-year-old Mikey. Comforts were scarce here. Vagrants slumped in alleyways, searching for solace at the bottom of their bottles. Men clad in tattered doomsday sandwich boards shuffled through the streets, muttering prophecies and begging for loose change. But there was one thing they can count on, that the new Bendy cartoon would be a sight to see. They were all the rage. They played before movies at the local picture house, the jewel in the crown of the Joey Drew animation studio. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor, black or white. Every kid in the country knew Bendy, the lovable rubber hose devil, always getting into scrapes with his beautiful co-star Alice Angel. They had a way of capturing hearts and lighting up even the darkest of days. Jack, a sickly boy, wasn't able to leave the house for much. He was small and weak from malnutrition, with deep-set eyes and bandy legs. But the new Bendy cartoon was always worth coming out for, even if the murky streets of the Big Apple frightened him. Mikey was different. Tall and confident, sure of himself, in a thick jacket and a flat cap. Jack loved his brother and looked up to him in all things. If ever he was going to be safe outside, it would be while Mikey was leading him along by the hand.
"Come on, Jack, hurry!"
he said, breathless.
"We're gonna miss it!"
Luckily, they didn't. In fact, they made it just in time to hand over their pennies at the ticket booth and take their seats. Benny's grinning face flashed up on screen, signaling to everyone in attendance that they were in for some nice, clean entertainment. Something to make them forget, just for a little while, that they'll go to bed hungry tonight, that the bank might foreclose on their house, that their future might just be a fantasy. All the best characters were there. Bendy himself, Alice, Boris the Wolf, the Butcher Gang, Charlie, Barley, and Edgar, and so many more. Jack and Mikey were laughing so hard that tears soon swelled in their eyes. But the fun ground to an abrupt stop when Jack felt a wave of nausea take over him. Was it his illness or his hunger? Impossible to say. One thing he knew was that he needed some fresh air immediately, even though he knew Mikey would be mad at him for having to miss some of the cartoon.
"Okay, fine, I'll go out back with you,"
Mikey said.
"But you owe me one."
The back of the theater was a desolate place, a windy vortex of trash and old newspaper, lacking any of the showmanship and elegance of the theater's facade. Here, Jack drew in a lungful of oily air and tried to calm himself down.
"You can be such a baby sometimes,"
Mikey said.
"And we were getting to the best part of the cartoon."
Without any forewarning, a raspy voice croaked out, "A cartoon, you say?" They looked up and saw a raggedy man with a ginger beard, small, dark eyes glinting. They had no idea how he'd gotten here without either of them noticing him approach.
"You just get out of the latest Bendy cartoon, kiddies?"
he asked. Jack nodded. Mikey just eyed the man with suspicion.
"Wanna know how they make those cartoons, kid?"
the man said, stepping forward, closing the distance between them.
"They make 'em at a big studio, you know. I work there, making all the cartoons you love. If you come with me, you can watch all the cartoons you want for free. Don't you want to meet Bendy, kids?"
Jack didn't see what was happening, but Mikey did. With only moments to spare, Mikey screamed,
"Jack, run!"
Everything that happened next felt like a flash. One terrible instant. The raggedy man pulled a blackjack out of his coat and brought it down with horrific might onto Mikey's head as the young teenager tried to raise his arms and defend himself. As Jack turned and ran, too scared to even know what to do, Mikey's legs gave out from under him, and he was bundled up into the raggedy man's arms. Jack only caught the edge of a car pulling up from the dark, the back door opening, and his big brother being dragged inside by the raggedy man. That was the last time Jack ever saw his brother. The police interviewed him and his parents, but they didn't expect to turn up much. The country was drowning in drifters, itinerant workers, and predators lurking in the shadows. The depression had made sure of that. By now, the ones who took Mikey might not even be in the state anymore. And what would they do with him? Well, it was probably better not to think about that. Better for everyone. Years passed, and Mikey still didn't turn up. No sign, no body, nothing. Jack was haunted by the memory of the Raggedy Man and his twisted smile. His brother's words to him, "Jack, run," echoing eternally through his mind. From that day on, he could never watch another Bendy cartoon. There was something he shared with his brother, and now that his brother was gone, it all just felt like a terrible, tainted thing. A reminder of the worst moment of his life, frozen in time forever. 1956, 20 years later. Jack Peele never forgot the awful memory of that day, but since then he'd gotten so many more terrible memories to keep that one company. No, it wasn't that Jack had lived an extraordinarily terrible life, though some would argue he had. It was that he'd since become an agent of the SCP Foundation. Given that some records indicate the Foundation had existed as far back as the American Civil War, the organization had plenty of experience by 56, but there was still much to learn. They lacked so many of the brilliant technological advancements that researchers and agents of the Foundation's future would be able to leverage, but they still made the best of what they had. In his time at the Foundation so far, working as a field agent, Jack had distinguished himself with extraordinary courage and proactivity. It was almost as though he had a complete disregard for his own safety. But on March 18th of that very year, they found the first crack in Jack's psychological armor. He was called into the office of his superior, along with two other agents, Agent Bluth and Agent Flesher, for a new investigative assignment. The Foundation had received intelligence that unusual activity had been reported around an abandoned building in a nearby city, a building that was once an animation studio. Joey Drew Studios, to be specific, the same company responsible for the Bendy cartoons. The second he heard this, Jack felt a dew of cold perspiration form on the surface of his skin. The incident, 20 years removed, suddenly flashed back in his mind. The Raggedy Man bringing his black Jack down onto Mikey's head, Mikey going limp, being dragged into the back of the car, off to some terrible and worse unknown fate. But he wasn't about to turn this job down because of his lingering childhood trauma. He needed to be strong, to be professional. Perhaps investigating the studio would be how he would confront the darkness in his past and put it behind him once and for all. That would, at least, be the optimistic way of looking at it. As was often the case with the SCP Foundation, the reality would not be quite as rosy. It was a cold, overcast day when the three agents arrived outside the once grand building, its windows boarded up, the tiles of the roof sliding out of place. To think this rickety old place was once a powerhouse of animation, pumping out cartoon after cartoon that fueled the dreams and imaginations of thousands of children, all across America and the globe beyond. Only Jack could pinpoint the exact moment in his life those dreams turned to nightmares, and on this very day, it was about to happen again. They removed the boards over the door with crowbars and then kicked their way in. No need for discretion in an abandoned building. The place was a wreck, slowly eroded by years without love and care. Faded paintings of all the studio's most iconic characters were all over the walls, along with posters for upcoming shorts and the Joey Drew amusement park wilting like dead flowers. Jack felt on edge every moment he was there, still, moldy air feeling almost solid around him. He could not tell if it was that this place truly smelled like death, or if it was just the memories it stirred up inside of him. Agent Flesher and Bluth didn't seem worried. They pulled out their flashlights and performed all the standard search protocols. Some of the projectors were still on, playing cartoons from half-melted film onto the walls. Seeing Bendy move like that again, like he hadn't in 20 years, gave Jack a prickling sensation on the back of his neck. And that feeling did not change when he heard Agent Flesher call out from the end of a long, dark hall.
"Gentlemen, come down here,"
Agent Flesher said.
"I found some kind of strange machine. We should take a closer look."
Jack and Agent Bluth ran down the hall to see what Flesher had found. It looked like a ginormous generator, an engine threaded with pipes and dripping with what looked like oil. Wait, no, it didn't smell like oil. It was ink, some kind of peculiar ink machine. Now, I'm not an expert in animation, Agent Bluth said, but even from my cursory knowledge, I don't think a machine like this is necessary in animating cartoon shorts. That was something that Jack and Flesher couldn't help but agree with. Flesher then noticed something. A button on a control console. Perhaps this would activate the machine. He reached out and pressed it, causing a horrible, gurgling, rumbling noise that seemed to rattle the entire building. It seemed that Flesher had made a terrible mistake. As the machine kicked into high gear, a deluge of disgusting, rotten ink spreading out over the wooden floor in a thick, black pool. The agents stepped back, hoping to avoid getting their Foundation-issued brogues dirty. But the mess did not stay merely inconvenient for long. The pool of ink started to congeal, taking a huge and terrible form, an ink demon. A 7-foot-tall monstrosity that Jack, in his deepest, darkest thoughts, realized reminded him of Bendy, the little cartoon devil forever tied to the worst moment of his life. The Foundation agents all reached for their sidearms, for whatever good handguns would do against a towering homunculus of ink, but it was already too late for Agent Bluth. The ink demon reached out and grabbed the poor man in its vicious clutches before unhinging its dripping jaws and devouring the man head first. Jack and Agent Flesher drew their pistols and opened fire on the monster, but the bullets just sank harmlessly into its wet obsidian hide. Their only options were to run or die. So they ran, rocketing down the hall with the ink demon hot on their heels. They'd get reinforcements and come back. They'd lock the whole place down. The dusty floorboards collapsed beneath their feet, sending Jack and Agent Flesher hurtling through the dark until they came upon a rough landing. Lights turned on soon after, and that's when they realized they weren't alone down here. There was another man, shirtless, but in a pair of old slacks with suspenders. His skin was the same oily black as the ink demon, his face obscured by a tarnished wooden bendy mask. Oh, and he was carrying an ink-stained fire axe. Jack, seeing this, quickly sprung to his feet. Agent Flesher wasn't so fast. Jack drew his sidearm again, but the masked figure was too fast for him. It lunged forward and swung down the axe, striking Agent Flesher in the chest and killing him almost instantly. As he saw it happen, Jack's mind replayed Mikey getting struck with the blackjack. In both cases, he was so impotent, so unable to help, unable to stop the horrors. As the masked man with the axe struck Agent Flesher again and again, Jack just turned and ran. He always seemed to be running. Now he was in a network of shadowy hallways dripping with the same mephitic ink, as more shapeless monsters seemed to rise up around him. Horrible blobby forms, some with some vestige of human clothes rising up and slithering after him with terrible speed and violent intent. He skirted into an adjoining room and tried to board up the door. He could feel them on the other side slamming against the wood, trying to seep through the cracks and enact their terrible will upon him. And so his life had taken on a kind of nightmarish cyclicality, that his angel of death, the harbinger of doom, would be a cartoon character. Nobody would ever know what happened to him. The Foundation would probably just mark him as missing, just like Mikey 20 years before. He would be another eternal question mark. Jack backed up against the wall and watched the door, waiting for death to come. But then something astonishing happened. A secret door in the back of the room opened, and Jack was suddenly dragged inside. The door closed behind him, and a gas lamp turned on. To his complete astonishment, Boris the Wolf, right out of a Bendy cartoon, was sitting right in front of him. The living cartoon raised a finger to his mouth as if to say shh, as the door to the main room broke down. But together, they might have a chance of actually surviving this. Now check out The Plane That Never Was, SCP-787, top mysterious SCP, and most scary horror SCPs that will give you nightmares, for more.